It is. And what I'm also interested in is what's going on now with these protests. Michigan is the biggest one, and that is the most obvious. The explanation for that is the most obvious, right? I mean, there's multiple things going on there. There's a racial dynamic, a huge racial dynamic in Michigan between, sort of the rural and suburbs and then the cities. That's a big part of it. I think another big part of it, and we should talk about this in a moment, is Whitmer is, I think, on, the short or medium-sized list to become a vice presidential pick. Michigan, of course, one of 3 states that were the swing states in 2016. And Wisconsin right now, if I'm the Republicans, I'm a little worried about Wisconsin because I tried to get everybody killed to get a Supreme Court seat that I couldn't get.
Right.
Although that same Supreme Court Justice, Kelly, has said that he's going to stay, that he is willing now to sit in on a case that he recused himself from 6 months ago, which will essentially purge 200,000 people from the voter rolls in Wisconsin. So Michigan is a key battleground state. Betsy DeVos funded organization, some like Tea Party type of thing, is staging these AstroTurf protests, saying that Whitmer is, shutting down and ruining Michigan by protecting people from the coronavirus. And clearly that is an attempt to win Michigan, right? And they're doing these protests. We're seeing them in Kentucky. Mitch McConnell needs them bad, and there's a Democratic governor there. We're seeing them in Ohio, which is a little bit surprising. But DeWine closed it down very quickly. He's reopening it, and I'm not quite sure. I don't have a theory about Ohio, but certainly in North Carolina, they're protesting the Democratic governor there, and Tom Tillis is in big trouble. What's your sense of these protests and where it's all going?
I mean, it's very strategically laid out, right? This is their extension of politics, and this is their way of weakening This is their way of generating some fury that's countering the fury that's being presented towards Donald Trump, right? They have to find a way to stir the animus because quite rightfully so, everyone should be infuriated by how Donald Trump is handling this. And so the push is to say, okay, it really wasn't as bad as everyone thinks it was. We really can go back to work, and it may not have been a hoax, right? But it really was just a hysteria. And so this is an extension of that. And quite honestly, it's exactly what Republicans need to latch onto to not become disillusioned with the fact that the president of the United States has put so many people's lives at risk. So it's really a smart play. I mean, we think of Republicans as being dumb because their arguments are sometimes so bereft of any substance that you really question if they have any intelligence at all. But they're very astute in their political machinations. They know what they're doing.
Well, I mean, this just reminds me of the Tea Party movement. It reminds me of even like the Brooks Brothers mob in Florida. Like, you got all these, John Roberts is one of those guys. I like to remind people. All these guys in suits, protesting and creating the sense of anger. And they know that if they can show the anger is more on one side.
Yes.
And, or make it appear that the anger is more on one side, then it changes the nature of the conversation. I don't think that's happening in the mainstream, but it is, I think, in many respects, a way of making sure that they deliver their base at the very least.
Right.
And hope they get lucky.
Right. And that's what they really need. Right. So, I mean, there's so many things that are happening. November is going to be totally different than I think anyone is really considering in the Democratic establishment. Right. Because chances are we won't have this pandemic completely under control in November, where people are going to go out and vote in numbers that are comparable to any other year. Right. The suppression of the vote is going to be significant if we don't get mail-in ballots secured across the country. That's number one. I know Kamala Harris is working on that, but we don't see a full court press from the entire.
That has to be a completely non-negotiable part of when the House approaches phase 4 of the stimulus. It's just, you just gonna say, like, we're not showing up otherwise.
Right. I mean, it absolutely has to be, but we don't see that unified press building up from the powerful people in the Democratic Party. And again, I I'm kind of thrown off because I don't know what their strategy is if it's not to just lose, right? It has to be their strategy is to lose, because every decision that they're making up to this point is doing that. Because here's how it plays out. If we don't secure mail-in ballots, then it really only is going to take the smallest portion of Donald Trump's base to win, because who's going to go out in the middle of a pandemic when chances are a couple of people say on the Democratic side, oh, I'll put on a hazmat suit. Sounds cute. They'll crawl through glass. That sounds cute. But the majority of people will not risk their lives to go participate in a political system that doesn't care about them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see any indication that the Democrats are serious about this. I mean, one of the things that Nancy Pelosi has done is been specifically not develop an apparatus for people to be able to vote. And is just doing unanimous consent. I guess they do that on some type of group phone call or something. I don't know how that happens, but and it is concerning because it is a way of basically making everybody give them cover to vote for a bad bill.
Right.
And it just decreases accountability. We don't know who's voting for it and who's not.
Yeah.
And people can talk about it afterwards, or they can talk about it before, but it doesn't even matter. Yeah. Unanimous consent. All in favor? Aye. The ayes carry. Boom. I mean, that's it. It's over. And so it's highly, highly problematic. And all right, let's